Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 418 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out for Christmas. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, my wife works for Navy Federal Credit Union, and she helps military veterans get into their homes all across the state of Tennessee and Kentucky. It's been one of the most rewarding places to work for my wife, and she's making a huge impact for our veterans that deserve the best rates in the country and an easy, straightforward process for home ownership. So that has been a lot of fun for her and very, very rewarding. Speaking of veterans, let's go to our next guest. Upon retirement from the U.S. Air Force, Paul Lawrence Vann became an entrepreneur. Paul founded Wealth Building Academy. He is a leadership expert, a certified financial manager, a speaker, a trainer, a best-selling author, course creator, and podcast host of Wealth Academy Podcast. He also leads the YouTube channel, which is called Leadership is Influence. Paul's mission statement is to provide results-focused leadership development expertise to all of his clients. In light of the dynamic workforce changes that are taking place right now, he helps organizations to maximize their human potential and also improve their bottom line. His new book is titled Leadership is Influence, and it provides a blueprint for people and students to become leaders of influence. Welcome to the show, Lieutenant Colonel Paul Lawrence Vann.
Michael, it's an honor to be with you, and thank you so much for being on your amazing podcast. And we're going to have a lot of fun today talking to that audience, which we know is ready for this.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, first, let me just say thank you so much for your service to this country. There's nothing more meaningful and impactful than your career in the military. But, before we even get to that, which I think is fantastic, going back to your younger days, I mean, you were born to a 10-child family. 10. That is unusual, okay? What did growing up in such a large family teach you?
Well, Michael, thank you so much for that question. And what it taught me, and there were 5 boys and 5 girls. I had one sister older, and I'm the oldest son, the second oldest child. And what it taught me was discipline. You have to be very disciplined with the younger siblings because my older sister and I were really taking care of them after school most days. Then it teaches you communication. You have to be able to communicate with them. My father had this conversation with me one time when his daughters got a little bit old. He said, "Don't let those boys at school do anything to my daughters." So I was a security guy in the family as well. I didn't know it, but I was. Then I learned how to delegate within the family structure. So in other words, everyone has to have order, there's accountability, and discipline was met by the parents. So those are some of the things that I learned over the years. And number one, the first thing that came to my mind was, as soon as I get old enough, I'm going to have to leave this house and start on my own. Because there were so many people, right? But I really enjoyed it, and it was a lot of fun. And as they say, if I had to do over again, I would. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the one thing is you're never lonely, that's for sure. There's always people around. Well,
Absolutely.
Cool. I like that. I like that. And the other interesting thing about you is you're actually a first generation high school graduate, college graduate. You earned 2 master's degrees. And what I wanted to talk to you about is really interesting and I think topical. College campuses right now have taken a big hit in terms of their high cost of education. Unfortunately, the response has not been very good to protecting students who are impacted by the war going on between Israel and Hamas right now. And you have a really hot job market that is pulling students directly from high school. So what makes you believe so much in higher education?
Well, I'll be honest with you. It came to my great aunt, and she taught in the public schools in our hometown, a small town called Henderson, North Carolina, for about 35 years, and she traveled the world. And what she told me and what she sold me on was, if you get your education, Paul, you can go all over the world. And that's exactly what happened. And I really liked that aspect, but it was all about this aspect of acquiring knowledge. To me, that is the most wonderful thing. I was at a book signing one time at Joint Base Bowling in Washington, D.C., about 5 miles from where I live. And this gentleman, he was maybe in his 70s, almost 80. And he said, son, congratulations on writing your book, but there's nothing I can learn now. He just felt that he could. And I looked at him and I said, I hope I'm never that way. I hope I can always learn, because there's always something else to learn. Unless you know everything, there's still something to learn. And to me, when I talk to young people today, education, no one can ever take education away from you. Once you learn it, it belongs to you. And then there's that opportunity to learn even more. And so I encourage young people now. And I have a daughter who's a sophomore in college.
Mhm.
And I encouraged her, and I have a son in 11th grade, and he's not so interested in going to college. And but his mom said, "You're going to college," so now he's going.
He doesn't have a choice with
He
his.
doesn't have a choice now once mom put down the law, right?
Yeah, listen, I agree with you completely. I mean, I'm finishing up a doctorate program right now. I got about a year to go.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. And I tell you what, the more that I learn, the more I realize I know nothing. Like the universe is so large that I know like this tiny little portion of the corner of all the knowledge that's out there. And the more I learn, the more I realize, man, I know nothing, nothing. And so I just feel like there's infinite directions in which you can go depending on what you're interested in. So I agree with you. I'm committed to lifelong learning. I also have two children. One is a freshman in college right now, the other one is a senior in high school
Oh,
applying to
wonderful.
colleges right now. And so I hope that I'm modeling the way for them, that they're instilled in their brain that lifelong learning is something that's important to me, and it should be to them too, the younger generation. I agree.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I got really bold, Michael. I was my children's PTA president for 2 years in their middle and elementary school. And I never thought that serving in the military for 20 years had nothing compared to being a PTA president.
Well, you had some transferable skills from the military to the
Absolutely,
PTA.
absolutely. But I wanted my children to understand the importance of getting a good quality education, because it teaches us how to more about ourselves as well.
Yeah, I agree with that also. Yeah, it really does help to find yourself and what your purpose is here on our planet. I think that's really important. I want to go back to your military for a second because
Sure.
you served over 20 years in the United States Air Force. You retired with the rank of lieutenant colonel. You know that enrollment is down currently in the military. So, in your opinion, why do you believe that today's youth should be considering serving in the U.S. military?
Michael, great question. In fact, when we look at the enlistments and the active duty personnel that are serving now, it's the lowest since World War II. So that's about 80 years. And the thing that I believe that a great military opportunity lies for that youth today between, let's say, 18 and 24 who are enlisting, it's a great opportunity. It's a great way of life. And oftentimes, children, youth get confused, and even some adults get confused about the military by what they see in the movies or on television. And it's nothing like that at all. It's not even closely related. So, but the military lifestyle, they give you the opportunity, if you're trying to get an education, they'll pay maybe 75% of the tuition, and you can get your degree while you're in the military, because that's what I did with the master's degrees.
Mhm.
You can have a good standard of living with housing. You can either stay on base, buy a house, or get an apartment you can afford. And then you never have to worry about food. That's something you never have to worry about. You always be able to take care of those daily needs as well as those wants. But when we look at the retirement, I retired. I could have been 41 when I retired, but I retired at 43 because I had a 2-year break in service, and I worked for Mobil Oil Company for 2 years doing financial work for them. So there are a lot of programs that are available to young people today that pay it. The pay of the enlisted personnel is more than I made when I first started as an officer. That's how much has changed. It's changed a lot. And then the retirement, you can retire after 20 years of service. Some people retire at 15, depending on what the service requirements are at that time. But then it's that knowledge, traveling all over the world, meeting people from everywhere, and it's just a wonderful opportunity. And you've heard a lot of people, Michael, state that if you had to do over again, would you do it? I would definitely do it. And the Air Force was for me. And the reason why it was for Paul is because they allowed me to be me. And I couldn't ask for any more than that. If
Yeah.
you can be yourself, you can be the best Michael you can be. You, I mean, there's nothing that can beat that.
Yeah. I
And
agree with
that's
that.
what it was for me. And so,
Obviously, it was a great experience for you. I have to ask because, my favorite movie series is the Top Gun series.
oh yeah.
Actually just watched Maverick with my kids
Uh-huh.
probably like 2 weeks ago. It was the first time they had seen it, but my wife and I had seen it already a couple of times. I mean, how accurate is that movie? Is that real? Is that accurate?
I would have to say that, anything that Tom Cruise is involved in, it's going to be good. And
Yeah.
Tom Cruise doesn't just take it and bring in an extra, someone to play that role stunt. He does it himself. I would say that from an aviator, fighter pilot mentality,
Hmm.
it's pretty accurate. It's very accurate. And I know a lot of Top Guns myself that I
Hmm.
served with,
Hmm.
and they are a breed apart. And if we talked about different benefits, the pilots might receive anywhere between 30 and 50,000 per year annually in the bonus because there's such a shortfall of pilots out there, of aviators out there. And some aviators can actually fly a drone and be considered an aviator as well. So it's very, very interesting. But I would say Top Gun and Maverick, of course, I've seen it all. In fact, when the first one came out, I was in well, not basic training, but in leadership school
Hmm.
in Montgomery, Alabama, at Maxwell Air Force Base, where all the leadership for the Air Force is. And that's when the first version of that movie came out. And I think I watched that maybe 20 times,
Yeah, me and you both.
The
That's a
music
great
was
movie.
great, the acting was great, and of course the flying.
Yeah.
And you can find me at an air show wherever they're held. I love it. And if I could share just a short story, Walter Cronkite was kind of encouraging me not to go into the military because when I was growing up, he was given the Vietnam Veterans Casualty, and I told my parents, I'll never serve in the military. But I changed my mind. I went to basic training, had never flown on an aircraft before. And the third week into the encampment at Dover Air Force Base, they flew us on a C-5, which is the length of a football field. So that was my very first flight ever. And then 2 weeks later, they flew us to Columbus, Mississippi, and gave us aviation orientation. So they put us in a two-seat jet, Air Force jet, and a instructor pilot, and they allowed us to fly the plane for a little while at about 10,000 feet. And after that, I was sold,
You
hooked,
hooked.
and sinker. It was over.
They know what they're doing. They know
They knew what
exactly
they
what
were
they're
doing.
doing.
Absolutely. I'll never forget it.
Your service goes beyond that because you served 12 consecutive years in the Pentagon and a year as a Capitol Hill Fellow working for a member of Congress in the U.S. House of Representatives. Talk to our audience about what's that like working for the Pentagon and what did you do there at the Pentagon?
Well, that's a great question. And I had just come off of that 2 year separation where I was recruited by Mobile Oil to come down and do some financial work for them in the
Mhm.
Beaumont and Houston, Texas area. So I came on duty and probably the first month I got there, I was walking down the hall and I kind of lost my vision. And he said, well, Paul, how did you lose your vision? There was this gentleman walking towards me, and he had so many stars on his shoulder, it blinded me. The light blinded, and it was General Colin Powell.
All right.
So I met General Powell, met all the top ranking military officers and federal executives that work there as well. But working in the Pentagon is dynamic. I had experiences such as working in different embassies for the Air Force and Department of Defense. I would go in and negotiate on behalf of the country. And like the Netherlands, and we'd go to France, Singapore, we would negotiate with them. And so that was part of the work. And then I found out about this legislative thing. One day I was doing some research and I asked my supervisor, I said, well, what is this? He said, oh, yeah, we have to work closely with Capitol Hill. So I started doing research on that. And the next thing you know, I saw this flyer came through that was looking for people to work as a Capitol Hill fellow. So I applied. And the first year I applied, I didn't get it because my supervisor, he wasn't supporting that. He wanted me to stay where I was at, which was, I understand that. But the next year I applied, I actually ended up getting selected. And I worked for a member of Congress on Capitol Hill, and he happened to be on the House Armed Services Committee, which is exactly what we wanted, so that we could try to get more aircraft more tanks, get more ships, more personnel. And so it was a really great experience. And I was able to draft some language for bills that ultimately became law. And so I had to work to get bipartisan support on them in order for it to go forward. So it was just experience I never thought that I would go through. And it was, again, they were allowing me to be myself. And that was really the greatest credit and honor I could give to them for that.
Paul, you lived a full life, man. I mean, you did not get cheated out of this lifetime. You're hanging out with Powell over there. Come
Oh,
on
yeah.
now.
Oh, yeah. And all
Come
members
on
of
now.
Congress, both sides of the House, Republicans, Democrat, Independent, I worked with them all. And we would have hearings that were on television. So I would have to give the member of Congress the information he needed so that he can get up and advocate for it. And I worked with constituents from the members' district. I probably went through about 1,200 constituent letters in that 1 year I was with him. And it was just a tremendous experience, something I'll never forget.
I bet. I bet. And then on top of all of this, you're a two-time #1 international best-selling author. Your current book is called Leadership is Influence, a three-pronged approach to becoming a leader of influence. So in your opinion, what are these three prongs to becoming a leader of influence? Because everybody listening wants to know.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm ready to share it with you as well. I came up with this concept for the book when I just reflected on really what was the catalyst for my life, and it was leadership. I started working at the age of 10, and my parents were both factory workers, and they had a side hustle. At that time, we didn't know it thing such a side hustle, but they started a community grocery store. The original title, Vann's Grocery and Seafood Market. And so at the age of 10, I started working after school, opening up the store where vendors would come, delivering soda, bread, milk, you name it. And that started me on my leadership path. And then fast forward to the book, I decided to write this book because leadership plays such an important role, not only organizationally, but as individuals as well. And people ask, well, how for individuals? And I say, because we all have to lead our lives. Our lives are based on decisions and consequences of those decisions. So that's really leadership. When we take it from an organizational side, and I'm going to go through the three prongs right now, in order to become a leader of influence, we have to have continuous study, reading books. For example, I might have Colin Powell's books and reading about him because for me, that was the person who had the most impact on me. And then it comes down to always learning, always studying, and it's a lifestyle. It's not a habit. It's a habit. It's not necessarily a fad, but a lifestyle. And so that's the number one, continuous study. Number two is the actual experience. When a person is working for an organization, for example, when I work for Mobile Oil Company, give the personnel an opportunity to lead, give them a project. Let's say, for example, if I'm at Mobile Oil Company and we have an audit coming up, let me lead that audit. So I work with Price Waterhouse Cooper, who's conducting the audit. We go and go to the tank farm and we see how much volume is in the tank. We see what the temperature is, and that tells us how much product was inside that particular tank. So that helps us to evaluate what the company. So that's a project. So an organization should give people an opportunity to lead. And then thirdly, is to actually go through some leadership training, get a certificate in leadership development or attend a leadership workshop. So we have the three prongs there. We have the continuous study. We have the actual leadership experience on a project or team. And then we have the actual certification, a leadership workshop, leadership development training, and that will help develop people to become leaders of influence.
Wow, sounds like an incredible book. I'm gonna have to go out and pick that up right away. One of the other interesting things is I work with fraternity and sorority members around the country, and lots of times I'll have this audience full of like thousands of just rank and file fraternity and sorority members. And I'll ask the audience, I'll say, raise your hand if you think that you're a leader in your organization. And it's like very few scattered,
Yeah.
people will raise their hand. And in your book, one of the chapters is about this idea that you don't need a title of a leader in order to be a leader in your organization. So, what did you mean by that?
Yes, and you're absolutely correct. And what people think is that, okay, if this person is leading an organization, he's a president or a
Yeah.
nonprofit executive director, or if it's a principal at a school in that title. But there's also, if we look at it organizationally, we have a person who happens to be executive vice president. But then we have managers who manage the workflow. The workflow is very important because that's all based on business performance. So the manager is a leader as well, because without that manager, they can't talk to the employees who happen to be a leader as well. And you say, well, how can an employee be a leader? They're a leader because they have to actually produce, let's say, for example, the widgets. If they have a daily quota of 50 widgets and they mark in at 70 for that day, then they're leading because they're excelling above what their requirements are. And so the employee is a leader. So when you can get the leader with the title, the manager leader, and the employee leader in sync, they all can carry out the vision, the mission, and the goals and expectations of the organization, which is all predicated on the business performance, because business performance also impacts the bottom line, the revenue that's earned, and it also gives them a competitive advantage, meaning that the valuation of the company, when you develop these other leaders, the managers and employee leaders, the valuation of the company actually increases because that's such a wonderful commodity to have. And most other companies don't do that. So it does give you a competitive advantage. And that's why I believe that more and more people, a leader of influence has no problem with developing other leaders. They don't have to take the credit for the job well done. The managers, leaders, and employee leaders can take credit for it. And it's stated that if a leader is really doing his or her job, then people won't even notice that they're there because their influence is working all along, that influence. And that's really what the criteria of the book is all about.
I love it. That is awesome. You know, one of my unique talents is to be able to spot leadership very, very quickly. I can almost smell it on people when I meet them right away. And, you know, within 2 minutes of talking to you, I'm like, all right, this guy is just a natural born leader. So I'm wondering, are leaders just born that way with all the tools that they need just in their DNA at birth? Or is this something you got to develop over time?
That's a great question. And actually, that's the very first chapter in my book. And it's the first chapter primarily because there is no such thing as a born leader.
Mm.
And I used the example of when I played football, I played high school football, ran track. I looked around, I thought about it. Was anyone a born leader? And they weren't, but they sure did work hard. They were in the gym lifting weights like I was. They were sprinting like I was. We were doing distance work just like I was. So they were developed over time. It's the same thing with a leader. For example, I always love to talk about Tom Brady, and I love Tom Brady. He's an excellent quarterback.
Sure.
General Powell's an excellent general, but they were not born leaders. They were developed over time, and there's no genetic research or studies that have been made that can make a link to a person being a born leader. In essence, they have to be developed over time. So let's say we looked at Tom Brady, one of my favorite players of all time.
Mhm.
He was developed, and he was developed a lot more than some of the other quarterbacks, by the way, because I believe that theirs was all based on leadership. That's how you win 7 championships. It's
Mhm.
developing over time.
Yeah, you're
Quarterback
right
can't
about
win
that.
without a good line, right? Tom
Yeah,
Brady
I
had
mean, listen, he had a great line, he had great coaching.
coaching.
But if you
Yes.
look at, Tom Brady coming out of college and you look at, his physique and his numbers coming
Right.
out of college, going into the NFL at the combines,
Oh,
he
yeah.
wasn't really a standout. Like you wouldn't pick
Exactly.
out Tom Brady and say that you're going to lead to all these championships. Nobody in the world would have believed you.
That's right. Not even Tom.
Not even Tom. I mean, look at him. Like his physique, he didn't even look like a quarterback. I don't even look like
Exactly.
he came off the couch somewhere. And he was in rough shape.
But he delivered. He delivered.
He
A
did
great,
deliver.
great, great
Nobody can deny
ownership.
that. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Just look at the
Oh,
ring,
yeah. A
and you
great
know.
ownership team, too. Absolutely.
Now, another thing that I wanted to talk to you about that I think you've got a great perspective on is thriving. The college students who are listening to you right now, they all want to thrive in today's economy, which is changing. I mean, you got things like artificial intelligence out there, all this new technology that's coming out. So, what are some steps that the college students who are listening to you right now, what are some steps they can take to position themselves correctly and win in today's economy?
Well, one of the things that I really want the young college and university students to do is number one, develop some leadership skills.
Mm.
Because leadership skills is the one commodity that's different than all others. In fact, it encapsulates all the other areas of successful people. But leadership is number one. Number two, I would tell them get out there, like I stated, and get some leadership experience. You can get it on campus in the Greek organizations. I was a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, so I was the
All
keeper of the
right.
exchequer. So I was getting some leadership experience. And then when I joined the military, I was involved in a lot of organizations. Uh, I would give people a tour of the base at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton. So I was still getting experience. I was leading people and taking them through the process. So it's getting that leadership skills, getting some leadership experience. And then the third one is save your money. Financial literacy. Save your money, because when you save that money and you're in your 20s, by the time you're in your 40s, you'll be a millionaire. That's the thing that I would do differently that I didn't do when I was that age. But that's what I tell them: save your money, invest your money, and keep a close hold on it. And then lastly, what I would tell the students to do is to just know who you are. We know that the dynamics have changed for the workplace and industry, going from uh, farming to factories, and now we're going information age, and now it's just all AI, high tech. Find a way to make it better, and then they will likely find their success there for the next transition that takes place.
Man, you've got great advice. That is gold right there. To all the college students, listen, go back and listen to that again. Hit rewind, listen to it one more time, because that is just a blueprint for you to be successful in life. One other thing I wanted to talk to you about is this diversity and inclusion idea. You know, as a member of Kappa, you certainly understand it with NPHC organizations. I'm a member of an IFC organization, is
Uh-huh.
traditionally white fraternities. You got Panhellenic and these traditionally white sororities. I want you to talk to our audience about how diversity and inclusion in student organizations like college fraternities and sororities, how does that position the organization to have a competitive advantage?
Yes, and a great question. And by the way, I'm a certified diversity trainer. And so I've been teaching this in Canada and Toronto and all over the United States. But the advantage that it gives is that we have people with different educational backgrounds, language backgrounds. A person could have been in a union, military, person from the ethnicity, gender. When we hit all of those buttons right there, we're going to have a very diverse individual. For example, I use the easy example I can explain for diversity is I'm one of 10 children, and all of my parents' children are different. And we like different things. We do different things. We have different friends. We like different ice cream, you name it. And so when it comes to diversity, if you can capitalize on the diversity and the wealth of experience that a person has, because to me, diversity represents experience. And if you can put that together with a team. Let's say if you have 12 people, I had 12 people on a team. We went to evaluate a contractor's plant. Then we bring all of that experience together and we can come out and win for the US government and for the taxpayers. And that's the advantage of it. It can improve the bottom line.
Mm, great
Yes.
points. I really like that a lot.
Yeah.
Now, you have to understand one thing about me is I love good food here at the Fraternity
Uh-oh.
Foodie Podcast. All right. And I know, I just sense that you know really good food too, that
Yes.
you've been to some good restaurants in your day, specifically, you know, in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area where you spend a lot of time. So the next time I'm flying through D.C. or Baltimore, where should I go to get a great bite to eat?
Michael, you asked the best question, and here it is. My buddy Jose Andres, any of his restaurants, but I'm gonna give you one now that I think you'd really like. They serve Mediterranean food.
All right.
They serve Turkish, Greek, and Lebanese food, and it's called Zaytinya, and it's on 701 Ninth Street Northwest in Washington, D.C. And they have the brunch, they have the full menu, and the food is delicious. And you can learn more about it. You simply go to www.zaytina, and you will have the best food ever in life.
I love it.
I have friends in Greece, I have friends in Turkey, and then I have friends from Lebanon. So it's a great combination, Mediterranean dishes.
Oh, I love those
The
dishes. And
lamb, the
it's healthy
kebabs.
food and it's delicious.
Yes, delicious. Yes,
Yeah.
the spices. Oh
Yeah.
my God. I'm gonna have to go for a walk.
I know. You just made me hungry. Now I gotta go have Mediterranean food
Me
tonight.
too. But yeah, that's the one to go to. But I live near the MGM National Harbor, and it's a big casino.
Mhm.
And Jose Andres had a seafood restaurant in there, and of course, everything was great.
Yeah.
Everything. And
Yeah.
so I would say any of his restaurants, I would highly recommend.
I
Yes.
like that. I'm a big seafood guy too. So whenever you're in the
Mhm.
Baltimore area, I
Oh
start
yeah.
thinking about those, the crabs and,
Crabs.
get out
Oh
those
yeah.
mallets and you
Oh
just go
yeah.
out all day long.
It's an experience.
It is an experience, no question about it.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, this has been so much fun, and I could tell you're a great speaker. You have incredible leadership skills, and you just have a wealth of stories and information to draw on to bring your audience with you. So, man, oh man, I mean, just to see you up on stage would be an honor. But I tell you, if our listeners, if they want to connect with you for speaking opportunities and they want to bring you to their college campus to come and speak, where should they go to connect with you?
Yes, I'll give them my email, info at paulvannspeaks.com. So that's info at Paul, Paulvann speaks, speaks.com. Or they can get me toll free at 800-341-6719. And they can also visit my website, which is www.leadershipisinfluencebook.com. And I have all of my information there, and I would love to work with them, speak with them. And I've spoken at a number of universities already, Johns Hopkins, University of Connecticut, up in the Air Force Academy out in Colorado Springs, and just a number of colleges and universities, St. Michael's up in Vermont, and just enjoy it. I really enjoy it. Yes.
Nice, nice. Well, that would be a lot of fun, I tell you. So, to anybody who's listening, you got yourself an incredible speaker right here that can definitely shine a light on leadership in many, many ways, I promise you. So, well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible. I really enjoyed spending time with you today, Lieutenant Colonel, and thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom with us today.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'm honored to be with the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Continued excellence in all that you do. I'm honored to be with you today. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And to all of our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Lieutenant Call Paul Lawrence Vann, I want you to like it and share it on social media. Share it with other college students that need to hear his words of wisdom. And we will see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we're going to see you next time.